Here in Des Moines, Iowa, covering the Iowa caucuses, here with Ralph Reed of the Faith and Freedom Coalition. Mr. Reed, good to see you, sir.
Thank you very much. Good to be with you.
Faith and Freedom Coalition, you put it together in response to the Tea Party to put together Tea Party voters and evangelicals.
Correct.
How does that work?
Well, I guess the best way to phrase it is it's sort of a 21st century Christian coalition married with the Tea Party, because we really believe that the faith and the freedom agendas are inextricably linked. We don't believe that you can have true freedom unless there's a faith-based moral compass that causes people to do the right thing without overweening government trying to force them to do it. But we also believe that if you have a nation built on faith, where basically the family, the church, the synagogue, the temple, the mosque, and the community really inculcate values and enculturate our youth, that you can have more freedom because people aren't asking to do through government what loving mothers and fathers and caring faith communities ought to do. So I'm not endorsing anybody, but I really agree with what Rick Santorum's been saying on the trail here in Iowa, which is you can't have a vibrant economy unless you have strong families. I think that's true without respect to a specific candidate.
Absolutely. But let's say a Mitt Romney wins, someone who's not known as an evangelical, someone who's not, not the conservatives' first choice. How do you get your people to rally around a Mitt Romney?
Well, I'm not going to pick the nominee here tonight.
No, I'm just saying, let's say it is a Mitt Romney.
Well, I would just say that two things. Number one, keep in mind that between 40 and 50% of the caucus attenders here in Iowa, according to the polling, will be self-identified evangelicals. And according to these same polls, 60% of those evangelicals are voting for either a Mormon or a Roman Catholic in this race. So they're clearly making decisions. Romney's getting 1 out of every 5 evangelicals. Either Rick Santorum or Newt Gingrich, the latter of whom is a Roman Catholic convert, are getting about 1/3 of that vote. So they clearly are voting based on a broad range of considerations, from issue concerns to leadership attributes to electability. That's my first answer. It's not just based on somebody's personal religion. Secondly, remember 4 years ago we nominated John McCain, who was not somebody that evangelicals were generally enthusiastic about. But by the time we got to Election Day, from the themes that he ran on to the running mate that he selected in Sarah Palin, who was not only good on the social issues, she was great on Second Amendment and gun rights. People who otherwise wouldn't have been enthusiastic went out there and rang doorbells and knocked on doors and walked neighborhoods and put on bumper stickers and put out yard signs, so that when the dust settled, John McCain got a higher percentage of the evangelical vote than George W. Bush did in 2000. So if it were to be Romney, and I'm not predicting any outcome tonight, but if it were to be Romney or someone else, a Huntsman or anybody else who didn't have that natural affinity with evangelicals, it's about acceptance speech at the convention, overarching themes of the campaign, and the running mate will determine whether or not those folks get excited.
You listen to the mainstream media, the New York Times, Washington Post, etc. The common wisdom is that an evangelical, more of a right-wing Southern Baptist, they just won't vote for a Mormon. Dispel that.
Yeah, not true. Again, if you look at the polling and you disaggregate the numbers on who says, they would be less likely to vote for a Mormon, those voters actually tend to be left of center and tend to be secular. I'm certainly not going to deny that there are deep and abiding and historic differences in the theology of the Mormon Church versus Orthodox Christian denominations like the Southern Baptists. But we're not electing an elder, we're not choosing a pastor, and we're not electing a bishop. We're choosing a CEO and a commander-in-chief of the country. And I would say that if it were to be somebody who is Mormon like Mitt Romney or John Huntsman, remember that the things that unite Mormons and evangelicals are far greater than the things that separate them. Remember that the marriage amendment in California, which was so deeply controversial, only passed, I think, 52-48, would have never happen without the support of Mormons. And if you move around the country, particularly where there's a high percentage of Mormons in the Rocky Mountain West and in places like Arizona and Utah, there's strong commonality on issues of life, family, traditional marriage. So I think there's far more that unites than divides.
Talk to me about a president in the White House right now who, when he reads lines that include under God or anything, some religious references, they're not actually read. Sometimes he omits religious parts of speeches and of quotes. What does that make you feel like?
Well, either the White House speechwriting department is having some major systemic management issues, or he has a discomfort with making those kind of statements. President has historically issued a proclamation on the day of prayer and held a ceremony in the East Room. This White House was very slow to make those kind of gestures.
It was also, he celebrated Hanukkah 2 weeks early.
Yeah, and I think that even more than what is the apparent discomfort or a lack of ease in connecting with the American people on shared values of faith, I think the bigger issue is how out of step and out of sync Barack Obama is on the issues and on the values. He has, for example, in the health care plan, for the first time since the Hyde Amendment was passed in 1978 under Jimmy Carter, and this has been federal law under Democrat and Republican presidents alike. He, in Obamacare, has provided for taxpayer funding of abortion. You have seen him say that his views on marriage are evolving. I don't know exactly what that would mean in an Obama presidency. We do know that the Department of Justice has filed briefs before federal courts indicating that the Defense of Marriage Act is unconstitutional. This is a federal law defining marriage as between a man and a woman for purposes of federal law that was passed by a margin large enough to pass a constitutional amendment, voted for by Democrats and Republicans alike, and signed into law by a Democratic president. So on marriage, on the taking of innocent human life with federal tax dollars, and lots of other issues, this president is way out of the mainstream, and I think that will have a huge impact in this campaign.
All right, last question. I know you're a big supporter of the NRA, Second Amendment gun rights.
Yep.
What would a second Barack Obama administration mean to the loss of your gun rights and the further threatening of them?
Well, I think through, first of all, his federal appointment powers to the courts, you can expect to see more Sotomayor-style appointments, people who are extremely out of the mainstream when it comes to the right to keep and bear arms. I think you're going to see the danger of a chipping away of the Supreme Court's precedent that the Second Amendment applies not only to the organization of state militias, but also to the individual right to own a firearm. I think you can expect the Justice Department to become increasingly hostile, as it has already been under this Attorney General. So I think on Second Amendment rights, there's a great deal of concern about a second Obama term.
Referee, thanks for your time, sir.
Thank you very much. Thanks for all you guys do at the NRA.